Hey everyone, good afternoon. Vin, are you in New York or are you out west? You're on mute, Vin.
Nope, New York.
You're in New York, so all right. Good afternoon to everyone. I know Ollie, Tom, you're in Buenos Aires, so you're about an hour ahead of us here in New York. But
Yes.
good afternoon, and I think people are starting to come in, and we'll get started.
Guys,
Get started in just a few moments. Give a shout out to Panchi, who's working behind the scenes on our technical side. And why don't we go ahead and start with a little entrance poll for everyone as they come in. Panchi, if you wouldn't mind throwing that up. And I know all of you on this call, we're going to get deeper into it, but have an opinion on this. And it's, can AI truly replicate or surpass human intuition in guiding fitness routines? Yes or no, keep it nice and simple for everybody. I, for one, say yes. Vin, I throw it to you. So you have the most experience in this.
My vote is no.
oh yeah. My
Ollie?
vote is no.
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 My vote is eventually yes.
So
Eventually.
So I'll give you my,
short.
and Vin, you'll appreciate this. And I say this is a caveat, because this question for me is, can AI truly replicate or surpass human intuition in guiding fitness routines by bad fitness coaches?
Yeah.
And, there's a lot there. We'll get into Vin's background and my background later, but, Vin and I for sure have experienced a lot of poorly educated coaches. And I think, a tool like AI could be super helpful for them, and also super helpful for people who have experienced that or maybe have lost a little faith. So, but for a good coach, highly unlikely, unless we get into sentient creativity, right? One of the things that's really, incredible about working with a great fitness coach is they can be very creative, and they know who you are. And I worked with Vin as a coach, and Vin knew I needed a lot of stimulation to stay interested. So he was very creative with the routines that he would provide. So anyway, I think we have a good amount of people in, and love to get started. I want to thank everyone for attending in this most recent monthly Amalgama webinar. Today we are speaking about how AI-driven communication elevates retention in fitness. I think we got a little taste of that in the intro. So I want to first let our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get a little more into it. Finn, why don't we start with you as our special guest here today?
Yep. Thank you for having me today. I'm Vin Maselli. I'm the founder and CEO of Verb, which is an SMS-based artificial intelligence and machine learning platform that helps end consumers understand their behavior on a daily basis regarding health and wellness.
Awesome. Ali, would like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ali. I am a UX UI designer in Amalgama. I've been working for almost 5 years in user experience, behind the scenes of app creation and user flow and all those things. So I'm really glad to be joining and participating.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And Tom?
I'm Tom Agrimbo. I'm a co-founder of Amalgama, and I've been working here for the last 10 years, which is pretty much the whole history of Amalgama. We're a digital consulting agency where we specialize in technology and innovation. Pretty passionate about new technologies, and for sure AI is one of those.
Great. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Travis. I'm the head of growth and innovation at Amalgama. I work with Ali and Tom with our clients, and already as teased, old friend of Vin's and former clients of Vin's as well. So great to have you here and bring us all together. Let me set the stage here and sort of give a description of what we're going to be speaking about today. We're going to take a deep dive into the future of fitness and understanding how technology, especially AI, is revolutionizing how we approach coaching and client retention in traditional gyms. So I'll start off with a opening question for all of you. We'll maybe answer in the same way we introduced ourselves. And that is, with technology playing an increasingly pivotal role in every industry, how do you envision its impact on the fitness and coaching realm? Or as you're already seeing it, I know, Vin, you're seeing it firsthand.
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting few years because with the pandemic and COVID, the way that it happened, I think it accelerated technology, especially in fitness, probably 5 or 10 years. And I'm just kind of throwing that out there, but I think it forced a lot of good money to get thrown at creative ideas. And I think we're starting to see the success of those ones. So to answer that question, I think that technology will always continue to enhance quality offerings when it comes to health and wellness and fitness. I think that it will make bad offerings worse and clunky. I think it's always going to be that happy medium between how much technology is too much and how little of a human is needed to move the needle for someone.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to coming back to you on that. I mean, as someone who is a gym owner and was a gym owner during a brick and mortar gym during the pandemic, and then also, a founder of a digital product, I think it's a pretty interesting intersection. I look forward to getting into that. Ali, I will ask you as a designer, how important is it to create, intuitive user interfaces for fitness apps? Now that they've, as Vin mentioned, that they've really exploded since the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then, now we're in the age of AI, and that's, added another layer of intricacy to this.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Vin. It accelerated things by 10 years for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Based on your previous question, combining with this, I think one of the things that COVID did and this technology boom is maybe not technology making the boom, but we recreating and reforming experiences based on human behavior. So we needed to adjust ourselves to people doing things differently. They stay at home. They don't move as much as before. I'm not a gym person. I'm gonna throw it out there, but I think that people used to go to the gym. It was more human-centered, and now we just need to adjust. It's just that technology play a part because it's the way that we connect as people. It's a way that unify those things. And now with the AI, as you say, we add a new layer. But for me, in my point of view, AI is just another tool that we use to help enhance experiences. If it helps, that's the important thing for me in user experience. Are we solving a problem? And is AI that technology that we need to solve that problem? I think that currently it's the hot topic. Everybody wants to be, there in the bag. It's a great marketing tool, 100%. But if the experience is not there, you're not solving a problem, that will crumble really, really easily. So I think it's an amazing tool. It's incredibly powerful, but we need to be respectful of that, get to know the tool, and eventually be solving a real problem. And that's for me in user experience and design. That's the core basis of what I do. And of course now AI is in the table to analyze.
Yeah, you make a great point, and I'm going to follow up with you, Tom, on that. Ali, is AI is a great tool, but it should be there. It should be there for a purpose, not just to have AI. Tom, you and I have seen many times, over the years working together. I want to build it on the blockchain. I want to have a token. I want to have and it doesn't really have a purpose other than maybe you feel you need to do it because it's relevant. And going back to the initial question about the pivotal role of technology in this industry in particular and others, and now the addition of AI, what you're seeing and what your thoughts are around that.
Yeah, exactly. What you mentioned, it's absolutely right. And we get some, you can see a lot of people that it's really excited about a technology and they want to just implement the technology just because they think it's something sexy at the moment or it's something hot on the market, and they are not actually solving something, right? And I think in that case, I'm really optimistic about AI and where it's going. But I think there's a lot of facts that AI won't be able to solve. And to identify problems, that's something that it's really human if you think about it, because the main thing is that the problems are human problems. So it will be pretty difficult for a machine, even for a really complex model or really well prepared model to understand which kind of problems the humans are getting in front of them. So I guess it's pretty similar to what you say at the beginning, Trava, about you have good coaches, you have bad coaches. I think the same happens to the models and to AI. You have a good model trained by people really expert in the field and trained with a huge amount of data, really oriented to solve what they are meant to solve. And you have really bad ones. So in that case, it depends a lot what you're trying to solve, how is your approach to solve that. And in that case, yeah, you can have like a really amazing output out of there. If that solves what it's meant to be, you can get amazing results, and you can get like really scalable. And it's like you cannot even think about how many results you can get out of there. But yeah, I think it's really promising what's coming. And if you think that these AI models have been trained with the data that the human produced, in the next couple of years, they will be trained with the data that machine learning already produced. So they will be producing. So it will be crazy the amounts of data that they will have to train the models. And I can't wait for the outputs of that.
Yeah.
Your excitement, I mirror your excitement, and something I want to just throw out to the people listening, for someone who's never written any code, and I would say still barely understands true artificial intelligence, as most AI companies are really just if then that statements these days. It's like, as opposed to really generative AI. And the way that I think about it is this: if you put a 10-year-old behind a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, it's really not going to do anything special. And if you put the number one, F1 driver or professional race car driver behind those cars, amazing things can happen. And that's really how I wrap my head around really elementary understanding of how powerful it can be with the right information in, then putting the right information out.
Yeah, I totally agree. Go ahead, Tom.
No, yeah, sorry. I heard something similar in terms of, I heard that AI could be similar to getting a group of really intelligent people together and having them for you, to solve any kind of problem that you want. But if you don't instruct them properly, they won't be able to solve any kind of problem at all, or they will be solving like really serious problem. But yeah, it's pretty similar what you say.
Yeah. Well, Vin, let's go back. I want to talk about Verb. I was with you when you first started Verb, and AI wasn't even something anyone was speaking about. And if I remember correctly, and please correct me if I don't, you saw an opportunity from seeing a lot of gaps in personal training, which is something that we've already sort of discussed. Maybe you could take us through a little bit about what that was you saw, and how that evolved, and maybe you could tell us how now Verb with AI is bridging some of those initial gaps and more that you have seen along the way.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that. And for everyone here, when I meet I've owned gyms and been in the fitness business for just over 10 years now. And prior to that, I was an investment banker and owned a number of other companies. And when people hear about how I launched my gyms, they always say the same thing. They're like, you're the worst type of person to open a gym because you give actual gym owners and actual fitness professionals a really bad name. and they're not wrong, right? I mean, I didn't study exercise science, and I don't know I didn't know the difference between abduction and adduction and the way that recovery happens. And all I knew that was if you did a couple things really well, repeatedly, you would be more healthy than if you didn't. And I had run a company with 300 employees previous. So in my mind, how hard was it to run a gym? And I opened my gym with the premise that I had to babysit adults for 1 hour, like Travis, keep them from hurting themselves when they were in my presence, and then just make sure they didn't act like children when they were out of my presence. And that was really my entire thesis of fitness. Like, if you pay attention to what you eat and your sleep, and you don't drink alcohol, and you do the things we all know, and you do them relatively well on a daily basis, you'll be healthier than if you didn't do that. And that was really how I built my entire fitness business. And the way that I coached people that were working with me individually was that way. It was really habit-based. It was super simple, like do a couple things well and do a couple things well repeatedly, and you'll be all right. And I set out to tell that story that, like, if you wanted to lose 20 pounds, you could get there in 90 days or so if you did these 5 things, which are really basic, right? Like eat healthy, drink water, sleep more, move every day, and don't be stressed out. Like if you could do those 5 things decently well for 90 days, like you'll lose weight, you'll get more in shape, you'll be faster, etc. So I just started doing that. I started selling that vision and program to people. And I was doing that all manually, right? Like, hey, Tom, how was your breakfast this morning? And then at lunch, hey, Tom, how was your lunch? And then at dinner, how was your dinner? Did you go to the gym today? Did you drink water today? And what would end up happening is our interaction, Tom, on a continued basis, you would just make better choices by default because someone else was actually caring about your journey and wasn't like, you need to do this, you need to weigh all your food, you need to run 5 miles. Like, it was far less intrusive and far more like empathetic around the idea of just being better. And those gaps, those were really clear to me that it was during a time, Travis, that people were trying to be more complex in the fitness they sold, not less complex.
Right.
How individualized can your workout be? If Tom is doing 30 air squats, Ali needs to do 10 air squats, and that's because she's shorter or whatever. It was like getting more and more complex, which turns off the vast majority. There's like, maybe there's 250,000 people in our country that might resonate with an individualized program that specific. And I think it's getting less and less as time progresses. So the gaps that I saw were just the simple things. It was like, be less complex and make it easier and meet a person where they were.
Yeah. And that's how Verb was born, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I was writing a book on habits, right? I was going to write a book and say like, hey, if you do something well for a focused amount of time, like you can get there and then worry about something else. And I had people become chapters, and it was like, Tom, hey, you have 90 days to hit this goal and do nothing except whatever basis around that goal is, and send me that information on a daily basis, and I'll tell your story in a chapter. And those 5 people grew to 500, and it kind of just snowballed from there. That people inherently are storytellers and we want to tell the truth, but the way technology and every platform we currently interact with, the risk of too many people being involved forces us to all be what I call manufactured superstars and happy, healthy, and wealthy, when most of us are none of those things. And the idea that there was an intimate sharing one-to-one, it just absolutely showcased that everyone wanted to share the downsides and upsides of their journey. And that's really how it was born.
Amazing. I mean, I love how the perfect example of how to create an MVP, right? Like, because you started doing things manually that, of course, it was impossible to scale that because it was you behind the text messages. When you realized that you needed like to take the leap and start to create a product or something to automate that?
Yeah, it was actually earlier than you might think. At first, people were text messaging me video logs. And I don't know if you know this or not, but one, sending a 5-minute video via iMessage has its own challenges. Like, there's some limitations there. So that was problem one. It was like, hey, I can't get my message to go through, or I never got it. And then probably within 2 or 3 weeks, my phone had no more room. So I couldn't actually get any more video. So that was really the genesis of the proof of concept, which was I needed a way for a person to record a video. It doesn't save on their phone. It doesn't save on mine. It can get sent somewhere and then I can review it later. That was really the proof of concept. And that was a Google sheet with a Cognito form upload, really simple, and a Zapier connection. And then from there, when I met Artur, my co-founder, he laughed at me, and we had like a really janky iOS app that was just like thrown in the app store just to see if people would record videos. And he looked at me and he said, look, like video, artificial intelligence around video interaction is not where you want it to be. It's not there yet. And we also don't have $100 million to do it. Let's do text messages. So I just started doing, I don't know how many, but it was about 500 or 600 alpha users that I was texting anywhere from 15 to 100 messages a day to individually. And then my co-founder and my dev team took those 2 to 3 million interactions of human to human talking to each other. And that was how our initial data set was built.
Yeah. And that, Tom, you bring up a point, and I'm going to put this both to you and Ollie, we're in the moment here in Vin's story where he, went to what we call that Amalgama digital transformation, right? Something he was doing essentially manually to building that MVP and, moving into that space of digital transformation. It's clearly not just about technology. So, I think the question I want to say to you both is, for people who are listening to this and looking to gain something from it, we have Vin's story of when that point is, what are some sort of key indicators for that for a business when it can no longer scale, or the idea can no longer scale, and how to translate that, into something, into an MVP. Maybe even a little bit, Ollie or Tom, a little bit what actually an MVP is would be helpful to people listening as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess MVP, it's quite a known term. It stands for minimum viable product, and the main objective, the main goal of an MVP is to understand how can you create, how can you solve a problem with a really small product without spending a lot of money, a lot of time and resources. So it's a huge recommendation to first have a validation before the MVP. The MVP, it's amazing and it's really worth doing it, but before that, there's a phase where you should be able to do things that don't scale, like Vin did, and it's usually without having a product. Usually you can use the tools that you use every day, like text messages, maybe a spreadsheet, or maybe even like a chat. There's no manual for that because it depends a lot on the industry, on what you are trying to validate. But you will have different kind of signs, and you will see if the users or the people in the other side, they are reacting to what you're offering. If you find actually a problem to solve, and if your solution actually it's a valid solution for these users. So I don't think there's actually like a moment where you say, okay, here's where I need to to make the jump and start building my MVP or my product. But there's a lot of signs, like you said, Vin, like having your cell phone full of videos. That's like a really, really good sign of, okay, I should move forward with this, and how can I validate? I start on building my own product. And I'm pretty sure that at that moment, your knowledge about the problem was like way more broader than it was before, right? Before doing all your, before starting with this. I mean, you probably went nuts at that moment when you had like you were full of messages, but that information and all that you learn in before building the product, it's really, really worth to actually have the right moves in terms of the product, because when you're building, everything is more expensive, it takes more time, and validation costs more, and it's more stressful. So if you make the right choices at the beginning with all this information, it will save lots of time for sure.
Yeah, I agree on all Tom's input. I think that when you're going crazy, that's when you need to make the change. I think your own health, it's an indicator. And when technology is not working, then you have to make that leap. I think what's interesting in Vin's story is that he had really the mindset to go into product building, which is you put your hands in the mud first. Like you really dig deeper in the problem because you're there, you're experiencing that issue. And it's sort of like the path I would recommend. Like, it's not like he saw the problem from somebody else or, just an idea popped into their mind and then they'll directly say, okay, I want to build an app. He lived through the experience, which I think it's the most valuable lesson for every entrepreneur is when you're starting really small, you have less things to focus on. So from the root of everything, how it works. And then you become the expert that you need to be to join a development team, because your team will just enhance your knowledge. We will never know as much as you do. And that's just something that people who start a business need to know. You need to be the expert on that, and you need to elevate your team. So I think that's the most valuable lesson for somebody that's starting, and especially in fitness, that I think you need to have a knowledge of how people do things, how they want things, how they train. There's a lot of terminology, and I think it's a tricky but very interesting business because the person is not sitting down using a product. It's an environment that's happening. They're in their house, they're moving, they go to a place, they're sweating. There's a physical difficulty in place, which you need to empathize with that also. Beyond the product, it's just the community aspect. So I think that's my recommendation for people in the industry.
That's great. I want to bring us back to kind of one of the main purposes of the webinar is talk about retention. Vin, I know you spoke about you initially, was about gaps, filling these gaps, motivating people. How did it impact the retention of membership, as well as, the enthusiasm to continue compared to prior to Verb? And then, to fast forward a little bit, and you told us about the evolution story, but now with AI, and I know Verb is, using a lot of AI, to continue to grow and scale. Let's how has it affected the retention and satisfaction of your clients compared to more traditional approaches?
Yeah, so retention and churn in our industry is interesting because depending on the type of fitness studio or business you have, they have different markers, right? There's different baselines. Typically, a micro gym is a gym that's sub 500 members at a location, right? For the most part, an individual person could navigate 150 or 200 of those people and do that really well, right? I could know Travis, I could know his birthday, I could know his wife and his children and his dog's name and his favorite sport. And it's really easy for me to make that a sticky relationship because typically a human can navigate about 150 relationships well. So if you dive into your business, a micro gym has a stickier retention rate because there's a human navigating all of that, right? And as you move into bigger fitness brands or big box fitness, it's called, where you have 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 people in a location, they're just numbers on a piece of paper. So the churn and the retention are much bigger problems to solve. And what I saw early on is that the people that I was interacting with on a daily basis, whether in my gym or out of my gym, I really navigated that retention on my terms, right? I am involved in someone's every day, their wake up time, what they're eating for breakfast, how they feel today. And at some point, Travis, it almost became really less about that individual, I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to run a 5K. And I was there for every action and aspect of that person's life strictly through the safety of text message. So I could navigate that retention on my own terms. I can decide it. And it was almost like I knew those 500-600 people. I could have maintained them as clients as long as I was willing to maintain that communication. How do you turn that into a massive scale and move the needle for these companies with 10,000 millions of clients? You do have to augment me to some variation. And how I think AI overall is affecting retention and user rates in the fitness space, it's a really that's such a wide question, because the amount of types of fitness apps there's like personal trainer apps, then big box brands have their own apps where they think it will move retention, right? If I throw the kitchen sink in an app and I've got 3 million members, like that should move retention. Or am I a small gym that's using Zoom for remote classes for people who don't want to come in? Like there's so many ways to look at it. And I believe each business has to identify the version of augmentation and technology that works for what they're selling and what that person's mantra really is, right? I never touted myself on being the best programmer or trainer, so I never use technology to enhance that. I use technology to enhance what I'm the best at, which is conversing on a one-to-one level. So when I now take, the AI pieces, which is monitoring daily habits, mapping outcomes, automating some reminders and questions, adding a small, GPT function for communication, all of a sudden I personally can go from 500 people to 2,000 people without losing any quality, right? So it's not only just about retention, it's also about the scale that comes in when used correctly. We did prove that if you remove a human completely, it lasts about 3 weeks till someone stops. And if you add more than 5 people into someone's journey, their interest in being really raw and candid also stops. So there is that sweet spot. And when you find that sweet spot, that retention pales in comparison to what was going on previously.
That's very interesting. So sounds like what you're saying, it's about, the sweet spot there has been about the real-time feedback. It's how it started and how it continues to grow for you. And Ali, as a designer of the user experience side, especially with apps that offer real-time feedback, what are some maybe best practices or some challenges or successes you could share about that type of work? I'll just ask you to come off mute, Ali, if you would.
Oh no, 2023 and I'm on mute. Yeah, hearing Vin, I empathize a lot with that journey of real feedback is valuable if you know who you're talking to. It's all about knowing the user at the very end. Going through fitness apps and user research, what I discovered is that there are different levels of expertise. So the feedback that you're giving the user is based on, how they like to be trained, how they like to be taught, how much detail do they need for their training. So that's, for me, the biggest challenge and the biggest learning through my journey. I think that you need to know your user. You need to be in contact with them and going really small, those testing slowly, asking them questions. I think that the real feedback for the user is caring about them. I think it's something that Vin said before. Instead of, I'm going to tell you what you need to do constantly, that's going to be, my message. It needs to be reversed. So my app needs to be a human being. It needs to ask questions instead of answering things that I didn't ask for. So we need to replicate human behavior exactly as we do in a product. That's really tricky. It looks simple, but it's really easy to be carried away by technology and all the beautiful and fancy things you can put on a product, and really say, what is the human core? What is the interaction that I'm doing every day and how I can replicate it exactly in a product? And that's the feedback I want to give the person. How is your day going? How much time do you want to train? How much do you know about this? So I can, with that information, you can actually train your AI to eventually give good input to them. So I think that my advice is caring for the people who is behind, that eventually will lead you to a good product. Yeah, that's my, it looks very utopic, but I think that the best products come from a real intention to improve their lifestyle.
Something that, sorry, just to add something to what Alice is saying, something that nowadays is, well, it's evolving a lot and it's quite promising as well. It's all the technology and innovation in hardware, right? In hardware, I think you can get a lot of that feedback that Alice is talking about, because especially in fitness, when you're talking about the wearables, you can have a huge amount of inputs about how the users are actually behaving, and how is well, in this case, the different trainings impacting on them, or maybe if they evolve even more, you will know how their organisms are in terms of food, of nutrition, of the blood. Nowadays they can still do it, but quite limited. And you will get that amount of feedback that it's like the most important thing you will need to do to build the product without even asking for it, because we know how annoying it is to go and ask for feedback to a user, or to ask them to complete a form and to do any kind of action. And it will be, of course, absolutely honest, because it will be like hard data that you will get for you to understand how your hypothesis or what you are doing is impacting on them.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
But
add something?
Yes, just the last thing. That's great, not having to ask for anything. But what I've seen is too many data, it equals no data at all. So we need to find a balance for that. You cannot show it's like, I always say this, I don't have all the things in my kitchen outside. Like, no, we need to show everything to the user so they find it. I don't do that in any context in my life. I have pans where I put them. I have my, my plates in a specific place. And, I start building my kitchen based on the things I want to see, where I want to see them. So it's that sweet spot that Vin is asking, to find that balance between, I can get so much information from you, I'm so excited to show it to you, but first let me get to know you a bit, and then we'll start, creating the perfect balance.
That makes perfect sense. Well, I want to, before we continue, and I want to have a couple of follow-up questions on those topics for sure, especially around data, being such a hot topic around what AI can do. But first, let's put out there the second poll. Would you be more inclined to continue a gym membership if they integrated AI-driven tools like Verb that have real-time, interactions, to assist your motivation, continue your gym membership? So that poll's up there. I'd love to hear what people think. Tom, I want to come to you first about one of the apprehensions I think we see with the whole world around AI is ethics and the collection of data, knowing too much about a person. Obviously, that's something you're dealing with every day with clients. That I'm sure you also have that as consideration with Verb. So Tom, I'll let you go ahead and sort of get into that a little bit for us, and how at least how your point of view of how we ensure ethics around that data for the user.
Well, ethics, I think it's the B-side that nobody thought about when AI was coming and was appearing. And for sure, something that it needs to be considered and a lot. I think my personal opinion is that every AI model should come like when you see food, you see the label of the food and it says, okay, these are the ingredients and this is how it was made. So I guess in AI, it should work pretty similar. The thing is that we don't actually do that research before using a model, but every model is biased, and they were training with some amount of data that how you chose that data is a bias as well, right? So if you know how it was made, how it was trained, which kind of data, or where did you take the data to train that model, you will know which kind of answers you get from that. And the ethic in those models will work pretty similar of how you train, because in the end it's a system. I mean, you can train it and it has its own intelligence for sure, but it will take all the examples from something that already existed. So I don't know if this makes sense to you, but
it makes sense. And Vin, I know you want to say something. I also want to say from the poll, Vin, overwhelmingly everyone says a product like Verb would increase retention. 91% of people. So
you'd be surprised what a friendly check-in can do for people's journey. The ethics conversation around AI is super interesting to me, because I believe, and it's, a computer really can only do what a human tells it to do. Even in general, I mean, look, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I can't imagine what it will become and what is possible. But at the moment, given certain parameters, you could run a generative, GPT model within those parameters. And I believe the ethics discussion will always come down to the only people who are able to break ethics, which are humans, right? Like, we can be unethical around the use of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence self at the moment really can have an ethics opinion, but it's based on the data of the person who put that into that AI's model. And here's a really good example. Early on, when GPTs really became super mainstream and that craze was going on, we were just curious how that might happen. And we have a suggested reply engine. And what that means is, Travis and I could be having a conversation and it's generating for me as a coach suggested replies based off the most common answers that other humans have given in our platform, right? And what we did was we took, insert most popular GPT at the moment, and we replaced our suggested replies with that data set in GPT. And the person, the client was complaining that they were depressed and hadn't been to the gym all week. And it was like Thursday or Friday. And the suggested reply from the large LLM GPT was, depression is, a really bad disease. You should probably contact your general practitioner and get on a Zoloft or an antidepressant. And then working out while on medication is also risky. So you might want to take some time off from the gym, which is literally the exact opposite that I would give someone as a human coach, where our model and our coaches would say something like, all right, well, it's, this week was, let's call it a loss. Get outside, get some sun, drink a big cup of water, know that tomorrow's a new day, and get yourself, moving however you can. And tomorrow's a new day, and let's start there. And it highlights that while that's not an unethical answer in either direction, it could easily be swayed by the ethical morals of whatever input of data is going into that.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Oh, slightly in the same vein, similar question. When you're blending now AI, we're talking about the subject of fitness and design. What elements do you prioritize to ensure that the user trusts, but also stays engaged?
I think transparency. I think it's something that Tom said, like being really straightforward with the user. Well, there's a line between how honest you're really hard with the user, but just trying to handhold them in the whole process. Like when I was building like a sort of onboarding for a fitness app, and I needed to ask certain questions that were, for example, your address or your body size, and those things can be emotionally delicate sometimes. So I just say, okay, I just need this so the trainer can make the best experience for you. It's just for him. This is just but it's sort of my voice. Like I said before, it's just a conversation with somebody. Like you're going to the doctor and how do you want your doctor to speak to you? Like, everything's all right, tomorrow is another day, let's start small. So for me to build trust, you need to try to unify two humans talking, like you're doing it through a phone or through a computer. And that is the first step. And then, of course, the engagement and the trust comes from the output of that. How well my product is really taking that information, processing it, and giving them something that they actually want. I think in the onboarding and the first steps of the user are very important, because it's the first reaction to your product. So you need to nail that first. People don't really pay attention so much as that area, more so all the features that will come after. But I think it's starting small, as has been said. Like, I'm gonna ask you a few questions, I'm gonna give you a few results, I'm gonna suggest two things, and then you start really engaging with the person when you start getting to know them. But starting small is good, because if you wanna contemplate a really broad spectrum of users, it's really difficult. When I ask somebody, well, who is your app for? No, it's for everybody. Well, I mean, we're all very different. So really starting small, engaging with a few people, then the rest will come along, I think. And then the human aspect of everything is key. Like, I think then you said it, like a small greeting, hi, how are you doing today? It really impacts on the person on the other side. And also, I think in fitness, for example, I don't train, but if I wanted a trainer, I want somebody who's super dedicated, super really explaining me things from end to end. I want to be treated like a child. And I want, if I'm using a product, I want that to be visible. And nowadays with artificial intelligence, we can bridge those gaps easily. It's incredible how you can ask ChatGPT, explain me this as if you were a user experience expert. And it actually gives you an input with a funny tone. For me, that's insane. I'm not saying to fully use it, because as we said before, if it's 100% a computer, it falls down. But for engagement, you can start customizing the communication more and scale like that, and really make it personalized.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that, Ali. I have lots more questions, but I'd like to take a moment to let our audience ask any questions of our panel. So please put those in the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can and get to what we can. And in the meantime, Vin, as this AI continues to evolve, you've hinted a little bit on it. What features or advancements are you excited about implementing the Verb in the future?
Yeah, so as it continues to speed up and become more mass adoption to it, we're seeing really niched specific GPT functions within a business that are given the right guardrails and have the right context, that then it feels very tailored, right? So if you talk to a chatbot on like a contact us button on a website, or if you talk to ChatGPT, like you can feel that you're talking to a computer, and at some point that kind of, it wears off, right? Like the panache of that wears off. And for us, we call it autopilot at the moment. That's not really what it's going to be called, but it's the way that internally at Verb we discuss it. The function of 3, 4, 5 back and forths, like in an automated journey, that we refer to them as layers. So probably at about 7 layers deep, that's like, how are you? I'm good. What are you doing today? Going to work, right? About 7 layers deep, a person loses the attention span. So really getting effective communication within our GPT function based off of the millions and millions and millions of communications we've had already. It just continues to get sharper and better and learn week after week. And with every day a end consumer interfaces and interacts with this function, it gets better and one of my initial premises was that a computer can never forget. So if I make a comment today, my GPT assistant will remember that in 6 months, whereas my coach will never, right? And that to me is really exciting, as that like meshing of the human coach and that function together start to walk a person down their life's journey will be amazing. And then, I mean, we have some food things that we're working on. I mean, there's a lot. There's so much you could do within communication. But I think that's the most exciting thing. And when you lay that over the majority of wellness, people on a wellness journey, it will move the needle for them massively. And we want to work with the majority, not the small minority of fitness goers.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah, go, Tom.
Because you mentioned earlier that you're not a tech person, but you're speaking like you're speaking about GPT, and I can tell that you really know about what you are handling and the scope of the technology. How did you start it with this? I mean, would you empower people listening to this, non-technical people, to jump into something that they have no idea how it works?
Yeah, it's I say that I'm too stupid to know that I'm too stupid. And when I initially started working, you know, a non-technical founder, we can only trade in money for features. And when I first worked with agencies early on in the life cycle, one, I learned very quickly that I had no clue what I was talking about. So I spent a lot of time just trying to understand just like some basic understanding. But once I met my co-founder and CTO, Artur, I mean, he's been amazing at really taking the time to help me to understand, so I could at least truly have a little bit of knowledge around that. And what I would say to the non-technical people out there, you don't ever want to be technical. That's not your superpower. Your superpower is whatever it is that allowed you to come up with the advent of the thing that you need a technical person for. So never really want to become technical, but you do want to at least have an understanding of what it is that you're building. And the only way to do that is probably how you came up with the idea in the first place, and that's to get your hands muddy, as you guys referenced earlier. And thank you for that. I still feel like I have no idea what I'm talking about. And I'd say most of the time I'm shooting blind. So when it lands correctly, it means that I'm doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. And when did you have the vision to do this with AI? Because at the beginning, you could have this done with by hiring a group of personal trainers and put them to reply every single message.
Yeah, so
you chose AI.
When I was writing the book and people were sending me videos, that was my first idea of it. I said, I wanted to build a platform that I could talk to a video version of myself and it would talk back to me. And it would never forget, right? And I could say, man, I hate my job. I hate my job. And eventually 6-7 months down the road, the digital version of myself would say, hey, Vin, out of the past 300 days, 290 of them, you said you hate your job. You should probably get a new job or change careers. And that's where the idea came from. And then that was when Artur was like, yeah, no, you don't have, that's not a thing yet. That can't be made yet. And we don't have enough money to do that. Let's do text. So I really always wanted to leverage that a computer was this repository of information that never could get erased, right? And our memories, and I'll get a little philosophical, a memory isn't actually a memory of the thing that happened. It's only a memory of the last time you remembered it. So it's why our memory changes over time. If you have like a 0.5% deviation of a memory, 2 years down the road, you could be completely off from what actually happened or what you remembered, but a computer will never. So if I talk about, I'm trying to, not drink anymore, but I tell my digital version that I drink every weekend, but overall I'm like, yeah, I'm a sober guy. The computer's not going to forget that. While my memory might get a little foggy. So that's where the idea came from, is like, I really thought that AI could do what I wanted it to do, which was remember everything, give feedback on it, and tell me the things that I was lying to myself about.
Yeah, That's incredible. That's incredible. And that maybe just leads us to maybe our sort of exit question, and we'll do sort of in a speed round, if we will. Let's keep it in the area of fitness and AI. And, you know, Vin, you gave us a bit of snapshot of what you think. So we'll close with you, but I'll go to Tom and to Ali, maybe Ali first. What's your forecast? What do you think in the next 5 years, you know, how that AI may reshape the fitness landscape? Whether it be from retention to wearables to nutrition to other apps and other things.
I think hopefully it will help people bridge the gap between, you know, not knowing anything, and the education curve will decrease. That's what I hope for, because I think I put it on my personal wishes for myself. I think it will help that, like, not taking too much to reach, you know, the knowledge to learn and to do things right. I think it will help people lead a healthier life with all the knowledge at hand. Like, you know where to get that information, and I think it will reach more places. And as I said before, you know, at the beginning with the COVID change, it will help put fitness and a wealthier, healthier lifestyle in the houses of everybody and the reach of everybody. Hopefully it will help people who don't have the resources to access all these things to have more options to do so. Sometimes, and this is maybe a different discussion, healthy lifestyle, it's for people with a certain type of economy. I hope that artificial intelligence makes everything more inclusive, because it will be better prepared for humans. Currently, AI is still something that is tricky to understand, and it has a tricky entrance. So I just hope like my mom could use it and she could understand it perfectly. And yeah,
So more
to be available.
accessibility.
More accessible. Yes. The more we touch it and we build it, it becomes more accessible.
That's great. I like that. I like that a lot. Tom, any quick thoughts on what we might see impact-wise?
Yeah, just to mention that, I think Harvard will be a key player here, because it will get a lot of more data for AI models to showcase their superpowers. And I'm really curious about how human will behave in front of this kind of technologies. Like, if you hear nowadays, they say people, it's more honest when they go to therapy with the AI models. They have this kind of confidence that you don't have with you humans, maybe because of the prejudge or whatever. But it's really curious how we are behaving with this kind of technology. So I'm really anxious about that.
Very cool. Finn, you have a closing thought on that?
Yeah, mine's going to be significantly less tech-based, and I hope that the push into artificial intelligence and hardware and wearables and implants and chips and all these things that are going to be at our disposal over the next 10 years, I hope that it reminds us that we all have the most amazing machine in our bodies, and that we are inherently physical beings. And like, in a world where 10,000 steps is the bare minimum to be considered moving, I think people have forgotten that we have this amazing thing that we can use in millions of ways every single day. And I truly hope that artificial intelligence and technology can just help the billions of people in the world who do not know physical activity at all, can help remind us all that we have this amazing thing in our body.
Yeah, I'm totally aligned with that, Vin, and that's, you know, my opinion as well. I think as we become more acute and interested in longevity and quality of life, I mean, 10,000 steps bare minimum. Until my iPhone told me I was walking 10,000 steps, I had no idea. And now it's, you know, not that complicated. So things like that, I think, are going to make an enormous difference. And you know, I predict we're going to see more stuff, you know, fitness almost reshaping to being about longevity and quality of life than, you know, except for that, you know, top group, as you mentioned, Vin, earlier. Well, anyway, I want to, you know, thank our guests. for attending and our panelists for being a part of this. Thank all three of you for your insights. It was a great conversation. Wish we had more time. To that end, our audience, I know Tom and Vin and Ali well. They'll be happy to engage with you on LinkedIn if you want to ask any questions or have a separate dialogue, as would I. You can certainly, like I said, find us all on LinkedIn. You can also visit Amalgama at amalgama.co, that's CO. And Vin, where can our audience find out more about Verb?
Easy enough, verb.co.
That's great. Awesome. Well, again, thank you for being on the panel, and thank you all who attended. And we hope to see you next month on our next webinar and be in contact with you all. So take care. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you.